Hi everyone! Today officially marks the end of Module 3, so at midnight tonight, Module 3 will disappear. Module 4 has been open for you since last Thursday, so hopefully you've gotten in and you've started to look around. I just wanted to commend you all on the way you kind of turned the corner in Module 3. At the beginning, I felt like there were some very safe responses, some generalized responses, and the more we got into the module after that first week passed, I feel like everybody started to feel a little more comfortable. It's so difficult to know that you're being asked a question and you have to kind of step out and say things that you normally have been taught maybe to not say in public or to not discuss. And this is one of those places where it's safe to do that. I especially liked the 3Cs discussion board. And as we started to get into that and really talking about what our 3Cs were, I like that you guys started to interact a little bit more and you got to know each other a little bit more. Another discussion board that was really impactful for me was how you learned about race. And so many of us are kind of like, well, I don't really know. It just kind of happened to me. And I enjoyed that so many of you were willing to step up and say, I got a talking to about it. It was expressed to me. This is something in my culture that we always knew about. When I was growing up, we were the only family in an African-American kid-run neighborhood. So there were elderly white folks there, but we were the only family with children living in this neighborhood who were white. And, when I was learning about race, I don't know that I ever particularly learned about race in that situation because we were friends, we were hanging out, our families were friendly. We lived in a city in double homes, and that kind of thing. So there wasn't a really big deal to me until we moved out of that neighborhood because they were tearing all of our houses down to build a hospital. So we were all forced to move, and where my family moved, which was still in the city, it was legitimately 3 miles from where I was living, but we moved into a neighborhood that was all white. And the way I found out about race was that our Black friends came over to play and to hang out, and we had a picnic after we moved in because we had a big yard, and what could be considered a big yard in a city. It seemed like a big yard. And the day after that picnic, somebody tagged our garage with the words KKK and wrote the N-word on our garage, just with spray paint. And I just could not believe it. I had heard the N-word before. I didn't understand the impact of the N-word ever. I was 11, 12 years old at the time. I don't think I really understood who or what the KKK was. But I'll tell you what, that was impactful because that's when I really learned that people were racist, that racism was a thing. And then what's very stark and memorable in my mind was that our friends came back with wire brushes and scrub brushes, all kinds of things, and we scrubbed the side of our garage to get that off. And even though we scrubbed and we scrubbed and we scrubbed, I still remember just because it was clean in those areas, still being able to see KKK on the garage for so long after that. And my parents still live in that area, and it's changed. That neighborhood has changed a lot. As I grew up there, more and more diversity moved into the neighborhood. But it was just amazing to me that within a 3-mile difference, how different the situation was for people who lived in that neighborhood. And those are kids who went to my public school. We all went to middle school together, even though I lived in an area that was called Kernville, and that was the West End. We all went to the same school together. It's not that these people were insulated from knowing that there were other races and ethnicities out there. It's just that they were protecting their ground, their corner. So that's how I learned about race. And then, of course, that education, after you get your first taste, you always know. You always know what that is. So in this module 4, we're looking now about where do we go from here? How do we step out? We have this new learning. This is what I love about learning about race. Like I just said, once you know it, you can't get rid of it. And if you choose to overlook it, then you are putting many, many people at a disservice and not using whatever power you have in order to better your communities or the children or the people around you. So in module 4, we're looking at where do we go from here? You do have kind of a significant amount of reading from the Coates or from the Singleton text, but I wanted to remind you that please, please, please skim, skim, skim. Pick and choose what you really need to learn in this last piece. If you haven't started to do that yet already and you haven't felt the freedom of being able to do that, I want you to learn what's most important to you. I'm going to offer up the resources. I think Singleton is a fantastic text. It has helped me to learn so much about my words and about my methods of having conversations. So I want you to know as much as you can from him, but what you need to know may be different than what he has to teach in a particular section. So you're going to be completing the Irving text. And again, at the end there, if you need to just be modifying it for yourself a little bit and skimming it, please feel free to do that. You also have a couple of things to view, and I gave you a couple of extra PDFs to look through if you're interested. Okay, I like the 4 roles of social change. That's one that I like to throw into social justice sometimes, just to start thinking about. So you do have these videos that are listed here. I love being comfortable, getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, just as a method of where we need to be now, because that's where we are. Just being uncomfortable with what we're learning, being uncomfortable with where we're going, and then finding the comfort in that. So it's a really cool TED Talk there. Immersion is a story about immigrant students, bilingual students, or students who are attempting to become bilingual, and their struggles with receiving access. And then there's an NPR, which is Can We Talk About Whiteness? Very, very enlightening. And then the Raising Kings episode. So just to let you know, Raising Kings is just to kind of give you a quick idea of projects and things that ways that people have started to move. Where do we go from here? Raising Kings is one of those things that somebody decided we're going to pick this up and we're going to go. So that's just kind of an idea of where do we go from here. In Module 4 forums, you have 3 forums this time. They're standard just like they were before. We are going to have one that's called Whiteness, where we're looking at how does whiteness impact access. There's one that's a graphic presentation, because I love a good graphic presentation. It's going to be fun to do that. And the other discussion board is where do you go from here? So sort of what is your mission now that you have different information or you've had a chance to practice some conversations. So the biggest thing for you in this module is this counter storytelling project. And I want to just, I've put it in, you'll see it's on the site in red everywhere, May 9, May 9. It is due May 9th at midnight because it takes me a long time to grade these projects. It takes me a long time I like to read them and then I like to scour through them a little bit more and really trying to figure out what your intent was and what you learned. So May 9th is the due date for those because grades are due to the college very quickly after that. And that it buys me a couple extra days to get the grading finished. If you're finished ahead of time, I'll start checking in and seeing if anybody has turned it in so that I can get those graded as quickly as possible. So with the counter storytelling project, since I posted my last video about that at the beginning of Module 3, I haven't gotten too many more questions about it, so I'm hoping that means everybody's okay. If you're struggling you thought you had an interviewer or an interviewee and now you don't, and your project has to change, that's perfectly fine. And for those of you who can't kind of find a really good site, I want to let you know about one that's called StoryCorps. And StoryCorps is actually people telling their personalized stories about events that happened. And remember, if it's a person who is differing from the base culture, the dominant culture, which we're considering that to be white middle-class American in this situation, then you can use that person. We are focusing on race and diversity, race and ethnicity, not social class, okay? So make sure that you're finding somebody who has a different race or ethnicity who is telling the story. But you can find a lot of those in StoryCorps. It's a free online kind of library of people's different stories, and they tell them from the first person. That's the counter story, okay? So if you find a StoryCorps that you want to use, that's the counter story. So then your goal would be what kind of questions would you ask this person? What kinds of things didn't you learn that you would perhaps like to learn? So you're kind of having to look at that as if it's an interview that you're not really leading, but an interview that's happening. Okay, so I think that's all I gotta say for Module 4. Please keep in contact. I like to know that you're doing okay. And if you have any more questions, please feel free to contact me about those. You guys have a wonderful day. Thank you very much. Welcome to the last module.